Hello and welcome to Friends with Deficits. I'm your host, Adam Sultan, and this is NaPodPoMo, National Podcast Post Month, number 23 for the 23rd of November. And you won't believe who my guest is today. It's actually the inventor of NaPodPoMo, Jennifer, she'll tell you her name.
Jennifer Navarrete, that's Jennifer. Navarrete. So that's Jennifer Navarrete. You roll the R's, baby.
Navarrete. I would have never said that. It would have been straight up Navarrete.
That works too.
So, NaPodPoMo.
Not easy to say, is it?
I'm used to it now. I have to not confuse it with NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month.
NaPodPoMo is inspired from NaNoWriMo.
I assume that was such. And you are the creator of this, am I right?
That is correct. I heard about NaNoWriMo, thought it was a pretty cool idea. I wasn't interested in writing anything, and I just thought, oh, that's kind of nice. And I didn't really think further about it until I heard that the bloggers had something, and they were calling it NaPodPoMo, which was National Blog Post Month. And I was like, well, when you do a podcast episode, you write a blog post because it's your show notes. So I thought, that sounds interesting. And then as I've, kept kind of poking around, I found out that some of the folks that I knew that were into video, or vlogs as they were known back in the day, I don't think anybody calls them vlogs anymore, but they were video blogs.
Right.
And so there was a NaPodPoMo. And I was like, the video bloggers are doing a video a day for 30 days. I'm like, well, that's hardcore right there. So I thought, this is actually, okay, I see there's a movement here. I dig it. Let me go join the podcast version of this. And there wasn't one, which totally surprised me because this was 2007 and October of 2007. And so podcasting had been around for a tiny bit. And I knew that there was a really active community. So the fact that there wasn't something like this in existence was a big surprise to me. I was like, that can't be right. This was those early days when it was just a bunch of us geeks. And the most of the world thought we were speaking Klingon if we said the word podcast. They were like, what?
So when you started this, how many people joined up with you?
Yeah, well, so 3 days before November 1st, I just decided to make it a thing. And going off of, NaNoWriMo, NaPodPoMo, it only made sense that this should be NaPodPoMo. And 3 days before November 1st, I just threw it out there into the potosphere and said, I'm doing this thing. It's like NaNoWriMo. And if you want to do it, here's what's going to happen. 30 podcasts, 30 days. And people thought I was nuts. But by the end of it all, by the time we finished November 30th, there had been 50 people that had made an attempt to complete it. Not everyone completes. There's been years that I haven't completed. It just depends on the situation and where you find yourself in. But the nice thing was that the hardcore group of folks that had decided to join this, something that had never existed before, they were really just a really dedicated group. And from there it grew. And it's had very many renditions because I think I started it maybe on Meetup and then moved to Ning and then moved to Facebook. And now we finally have a website, but we have a Facebook group. That's probably the core of where we're at now. And the website is napodpomo.org because when I think of org, I think of community. I think, and obviously think of nonprofit, but I just think in my mind, this will always be a community-based month, annual challenge. And it's something that we can all get together and just be okay with trying new things. And if you're a new podcaster, it's a really great space to kind of dip your toe into the stream in a no pressure environment. Now, the pressure is internal because you're wanting to do 30 episodes in 30 days, but there's not the feeling that you have to have perfection. And that's why we call it a fail fast, get good challenge.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, I've been at this a couple of years and this is ridiculous what I'm doing this month. It's like breaking every rule I set for myself just so that I can fulfill 30 days of podcast posts.
Well, but what have you learned? Have you learned anything on the times that you've done it? I mean, usually I learn at least one or two things new. And sometimes it's, ooh, this is really cool. I want to do this. And other times it's like, ooh, that was terrible. I never want to do that again.
Yeah. I think I've learned, as I'm learning in other areas too, just one thing, don't sweat the small stuff, which is kind of obvious. And then also that there's always something to create, I think. I mean, obviously, if I was very hung up on sticking with my theme, which usually has to do with people and their life predicaments, then I might be struggling a little bit just grabbing people from the street. What's wrong with you? Quick, but but now I'm just like, oh, I could read a poem. I could, call a relative. I don't know. It's kind of so all over the place.
It's almost like we all have permission to fumble along and figure things out. And that's one of the things I really like. Now, having been in the space for as long as I have, since I started back in 2005, there begins to be this internal pressure that if you put anything out, it better be amazing, because people are going to go, God, they've been in this space for a long time and they're putting out subpar content. And I feel like for NaPodPoMo, there's no such thing as subpar content, because we're all scrambling and trying to get it done and figuring things out and trying new things. And it's just really great permission to stumble and to go, oof, that wasn't really good. Let me try this. And so my challenge for this month was to try mobile apps. I consider mobile podcasting to be level 1 of 4 levels of podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And I've used level 1, but I haven't really made a really dedicated effort to make an actual show out of it. And I wasn't sure I wanted to commit to just one. So I thought, I'm going to challenge myself to try out these different mobile apps. I'm going to challenge myself to use different recording setups. And I'm going to see what I like and see what works and what doesn't work. And then share my findings with, the listeners or with the fellow NaPodPoMo participants.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of fun.
Cool. I did that one mobile thing with just my iPhone, and the main thing I learned was stick it farther in your guest's face, but that's my tip. Pro tip. So how many people have been involved in this or are involved in this?
Oh gosh, because we move from platform to platform, it's hard to say. There are some amazing stories. Like right now inside of the Facebook group, there's like 170 something people that are part of the group.
Right. But are they all doing it?
I don't think everyone is doing it.
Okay.
Some folks have started and stopped and anything like that. So typically we have I want to say about 50 becomes this really sweet spot where we have about that many people who are active participants.
Mm-hmm.
I always talk about NaPodPoMo being a safe space to figure things out as far as podcasting goes, whether you're a newbie or whether you're a veteran. For some folks, they are doing it internal. So they're recording along with us, but they're not releasing it.
Ah, okay.
And then they're sharing, but everyone has a different way of doing it, and different people have done it differently. Many times I have people who have told me, and this is not this year, but in a previous year, I'm just recording. This is just, I'm in the group and I'm really excited about what I'm learning and I'm happy to comment, but I'm not releasing this at all. I'm actually using this as a prompt or a push for me to create this content that I've been wanting to create. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to then go and edit it and really, clean it up and then turn that into what I release in the next year. And that was, I think, maybe 2 years ago that someone told me that.
That's a great idea, because I've always heard, you should throw out your first handful or dozen episodes. And I was like, screw that, but now I could say, I just recorded in November,
The whole month, right? Yeah. And that's true. I mean, we always talk about your first 5 shows or so, no matter how well you prepare, no matter how much time you put into the quality of your production. When you get to show 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, you can look back on those 5 shows and go, yikes, those were not actually that great. But how do you get to show 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 unless you get those first 5 shows out of the way? So that's another opportunity for folks to fail fast, get good inside of NaPodPoMo.
Yeah.
If they haven't launched anything yet, stumble through, figure it out, develop your voice, not just your voice as a podcaster, but your potential show's voice, because, you can kind of muck around and figure it out. And then the cool thing is that the podcasters in the group, they're so generous and so giving. And so if you were a little insecure about your podcasting voice or about your technique or your thoughts, we're there to kind of champion what you're doing or to offer potential solutions or brainstorm with you on challenges that you're facing, or just be there to commiserate with you when something just epic failed.
Right.
Because, we've all been there.
Yeah. So what about, rather than developing your voice, the notion of losing your voice? Because if you release all these and your audience, discovers you've taken this strange turn.
Yes. So I have heard of that. Now, not me. I usually do something new. I liked the challenge of trying something new for NaPodPoMo, but I have heard where people, instead of creating a separate category feed in their main feed, they just kept it like, we release a show once a week and all of a sudden their audience is getting, daily shows for a whole month. And they felt like, well, what's happening here? I have heard those stories. I recommend that you do something separate, even if you want that to be, consider it bonus content. And I would pitch it that way to your audience. Because remember, our listeners, they're on this journey with us, and we've got to keep them informed. If we decide to go right or to take a left in Albuquerque, we've got to take them on that path with us. We can't just blow them out of the water and surprise them without giving them a heads up.
Why didn't I talk to you a month ago? Because I'm just like, here, everybody.
Right. Well, these are the lessons learned, right, over time, and you get wiser on these things. And the nice thing is we have this collective community knowledge base, which is nice. I've heard people say that they just kind of threw it to their audience and just pitched it as bonus sessions, and then it turns out when they look at the stats that the bonus sessions consistently, even to this day, like a year later, are the higher numbers of show listens versus their traditional weekly show. And they use that 30 days of podcasting to be more vulnerable and to share more personal stories as opposed to the traditional show format. And apparently the audience really loved that vulnerability. But she would never have known that had she not decided to do NaPodPoMo. And, people have created books off of the stuff they created. It inspired them to write a book on that content.
Wow.
It can be anything you want it to be, but it could also be nothing. It could be just something fun.
Yeah. Mine's a combination of anything I want and nothing. So
Yeah, I mean, what you can do is you can create a second separate category feed. I host through Blueberry, and so they offer category feeds, and so it could be secondary, and that makes it where it's separate from everything else. But if it's in your normal feed, iTunes they're not going to care. They're going to pull. You can say it's bonus content, but for them, if it's in the same feed, then that's where it's going to go.
Can you pull it out after the fact? I mean, if you've already published it and it's in your main feed, can you run it as a secondary feed?
I would guess you could, because then if the feed isn't there for it to pull, I'm not sure how iTunes would handle that refresh. If you pulled the audio, would it still hold those listings there? But then when they click play, nothing would happen because there wouldn't be the audio file dedicated in that feed. That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, me neither.
Tell me about your podcast or podcasts if you have more than one.
My very first podcast was called The Morning Brewcast back in 2005. And that was something I did with my sister where we drank coffee and talked about coffee and interviewed people about coffee. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely a blast. And then one year, I think it was maybe 2008 or so, I wanted to try my hand at live because at the time I was recording everything and then going into post-production and having a lot of 3 a.m. editing sessions, which that gets old after a while. And I thought I've got to get comfortable with live. So I thought for NaPodPoMo that year, I'm going to go live, but I didn't want to go live solo. So I reached out to the San Antonio podcasting group and said, hey, I want to do this thing. Does somebody want to do it with me? And I had one of the members say, I'm not a podcaster, but if you're willing to teach me and have me be part of what you're doing, I'm happy to do it. And so we did 30 shows called Tech in 20, technology in 20 minutes. And at the end of that month, we both were like, this is a blast. Let's keep doing this, just not daily. And so we wound up doing it 2 shows a week for 5 years until that pod faded. And I've done a lot of other shows in between, just so many that I'm kind of at the stage where the only dedicated podcast that I do is probably NaPodPoMo. I'm doing work on the production side. I do a lot of speaking. I help a lot of clientele, but I don't have the traditional podcast that you would think of or that I started with or have had in the past. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested in developing something in 2020. And some of the stuff that I'm developing or learning through NaPodPoMo this year is kind of informing a little bit of that on whether I will proceed with that or not. So I'm not your typical podcaster at this point. I've been in it a very long time. And I come at it not only from the speaker and organizer and, production side, but also as someone who can drop in and out at any time and do something really quickly and be totally satisfied with it and not feel like it needs to go any further. So the NaPodPoMo podcast I'm doing right now is just personal. It's not a actual podcast for National Podcast Post Month.
Okay, gotcha. Speaking of national, is everybody in the United States? Are they in Texas mainly?
No,
Is it?
no. There was a big kind of kerfuffle about that. We've had international podcasters join us from the very beginning. So I've never actually thought of. I know what the word national means. It means like a nation, right? That's where it comes from. But I've always thought of us as a nation of podcasters, and so we're a global nation. And I did a little video
Smart.
inside of the Facebook group, kind of addressing that I don't really think of it as. I mean, we have UK podcasters and who have done it for years and years, and they call it National Podcast Post Month. They understand that it's not US based. I just don't think of it that way. But I did get a little pushback this year from someone who said, I think it's confusing. Can you change the name? And I'm like, this is year 12.
Yeah.
and it's also based off of NaNoWriMo, which is also global. It's not
Right.
not anything like we're trying to be to exclude anyone, not in any way, shape, or form. I think it's just kind of that same vibe of the challenge. And if we're a nation of global podcasters, then we don't have borders.
Yeah, there you go. Is it concentrated in any particular place?
I would say we probably have the majority of U.S. Podcasters, but the UK folks are really ramping up. I mean, every year we get more and more of them. We've had some folks from Australia and Canada, and I'm trying to think of where else. I don't know if we've had anybody from Mexico or South America. Maybe somebody from Germany once. Or was it Sweden? I'm sorry. It's been 12 years and we've had a lot of, I would love it to grow. I would love for folks to create local chapters, and this be the big, event that all the local chapters support. I think the opportunity for growth is amazing. And if folks are interested in being part of how we can grow this so that it becomes something that, more countries, more people are involved in, I'm all for it.
Cool. Yeah, that would be fun. We'll see how I feel next year.
Well, so we're in week 3 now, going into week 4. We're on the 23rd.
Yeah.
And so we've got 7 days left, and 7 days left means that we've got 1 week left. And this is the time where you start to miss NaPodPoMo, because week 2 and week 3, it's a grind. It is a total grind to get these out. But when you get to week 4, you realize, oh, we're almost done. And then you start to realize, I'm going to miss this.
Yeah, I may. We'll see. If I haven't,
you're like, I'm not there yet, Jennifer.
Not there yet. If I haven't lost my whole audience by the end of the week, we'll see. So hard to tell. I'll see as time rolls on who's hung out with me since before and after NaPodPoMo.
Well, and you could always poll your audience, right? So you said we just finished this 30-day marathon of podcasts. How was it for you? Because this is what it was like for me, and I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Right.
Only because it's like hopefully they'll be wanting to at least share. You won't get everybody, but maybe a few folks will kind of give you an indication of what they liked, and maybe even what they didn't like. What did you like about the 30 days of podcasting, and what was it that you were like, no, don't do that anymore?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I think some people want me to get back to my usual programming, but.
Sure.
We'll see. And speaking of that, since this is usually Friends with Deficits, and I normally ask people what, as a kind of alternate question, what they feel like the benefits are of whatever particular affliction or challenge or whatever they have, I would ask.
So we didn't talk about what mine are. Like, what's my deficit?
Well, yeah, we haven't talked about that to begin with.
Mine may or may not be rare, unusual. I don't know. I think one of the big deficits for me that I'm really trying to work on recently, and I'm really shifting. Right now, I'm shifting a lot of things. There's a lot of things in play, is really trying to understand where I need to be more forthcoming I need to be more pushy in some things, and some things I need to pull back on. And I'm really trying to figure out what that is. I'm actually making big decisions in reference to team development, project development, client development. And there's a part of me that I want to do it all, right? And we all do, right? Can we have our cake and can we eat it too? And I think some of the big things I'm learning is that no, Jennifer, you cannot have your cake. You cannot eat it too. And so the tough thing is I'm having to stop certain projects in order to embrace some of the unknown. And that can be really intimidating because the comfy thing is the thing you've always done.
But isn't NaPodPoMo about having your cake and eating it too? Seems like that's the whole thing. It's like everything I've ever wanted to do, I can do every day, something different.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. I certainly feel that way about NaPodPoMo, and I really like being able to connect with fellow podcasters. I think for me, that's one of the biggest takeaways is this sense of community that we get in this small window of time in the year. If we go back to when podcasting was new, it was kind of like this, but all the time
Right.
because there were so few of us.
Right.
Now, of course, it's much bigger, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I love that it's really seeing its day,
Yeah.
but that really tight knit, close knit community has gotten a little bit lost. And so when I get to spend time really closely with my fellow podcasters daily, because we're releasing shows almost daily, it's a really nice family feeling, and I absolutely love
Great.
it.
Well, all right, then let me rephrase that other question. Is what's the worst thing about NaPodPoMo for you?
The worst thing is not having the time to do it well in the way that I would like to do it. I always do feel like most folks do that we're scrambling to get this done, which is a beauty in and of itself. But there is that part of the part of you, the perfectionist part of us all, that wants it to really shine really well. And I wish I had more time to devote to it because again, this is a community based project.
Yeah.
I wish I could really make this big. And so the bad part is that I just don't have the time to make it big, and which is another reason why I think if we could invite the community to be active participants in it, I think it could grow much quicker than being limited to just me.
Right.
I've created it. I'm the founder, but it shouldn't only rest on me to drive it. Like I would like to have people in different countries or different parts of the world to say, hey, we're going to champion this in our part of the world. And I'm like, great. How can I help you? How can we make that happen? Because I think the more of us that are involved in a proactive way, the better that it can be for others. Because as much as we're having fun and learning and sharing and growing, there's a whole world of people that should be in this space and could really benefit from this, but have no clue it exists.
Yeah. Well, you got to give it time. It's been what, 12 years or so?
Yeah, it's only been 12 years.
So go easy on yourself, Jennifer,
I know, right? I think that's the biggest fail is that it's just been this really small thing that I enjoy, but I'm realizing that I need to really let it grow. And it's not like I'm stopping it from growing, but I haven't actually ever asked anyone, like, help me grow this. It just never occurred to me. I just thought, oh, this is a fun thing that we do every year and it's fun. And it is.
Yeah.
And it's a community thing. And then, okay, check, done until next year. And this year, I'm really realizing that I need to invite others to be an active participant in a leadership way in order for this to grow the way that it can have the most impact. So I guess for me, that's been the V8 moment. I don't know if people still know what that means, but the aha moment where I realized that this could really be big and it could really have a bigger impact than it does, because I get stories like the someone wrote a book on it. Somebody did this, somebody did that, all these things. I get those stories every single year from people who participate. And then I realize there could be a lot more people who have those kind of big impacts and big, aha moments themselves, if only more people knew about it. So I guess for right now, on your show, for the very first time, I am inviting folks podcasters around the globe who are interested in taking a proactive leadership role inside of National Podcast Post Month to make year 13, lucky 13, where it really has a true, deep global impact beyond what we've been able to accomplish thus far in the first 12 years.
All right. You heard it here first on Friends with Deficits.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking, because I may not have thought to share it like that. It's been percolating in my mind. Mm-hmm. And you asking that question really prompted me to do that, to feel confident and bold for the ask. So I totally appreciate that you asked.
And I guess you might already be doing this or have talked about this, but have you thought of, or are you kind of branding it as a beginner's thing? Like, NaPodPoMo, how to get a podcast started, sign up in November and sharpen your toolkit in a whole month.
Right. The way that I've come up with it is that if you're a newbie, it's a great way to fail fast, get good, and dip your toe into the stream in a safe community environment. And if you're a veteran like myself, it's a really great place to test out new things and be experimental in a safe community space.
And if you're in between like me, it's just confusing until the next time you do it. So, I'm actually having a blast doing it. But when I first started, I was like, all right, who invented this? I got to go talk to them. You know?
You're like, I'm angry. I actually had somebody who posted, it was a Fish Nerds. What's his name? Can't think of his name. He does the Fish Nerds podcast, and he was interviewing Dave Jackson, and Dave Jackson interviewed me at She Podcasters when we were just chatting. He pulled out his phone and interviewed me about NaPodPoMo. And so he heard about NaPodPoMo through Dave Jackson's podcast. And then he told Dave, I kind of hate you right now.
Yep.
And I thought that's between week 2 and week 3, you're like, what am I doing? What am I thinking? Who thought this was a good idea? Why did I think I could, there's all that moment where, yeah, you're not loving NaPodPoMo at all in week 2 and 3. But I promise you this next week, as it closes out and you're not going to be hearing these daily shows from the folks that have become your podcast friends, you're going to start to feel like you miss it already.
I hope so. Yeah. I can.
You're like, I don't miss it right now. Matter of fact, the only reason you're on the show is because I'm mad at you.
Exactly. And I need something for November 23rd. No, it's been great. Actually, it has been. We'll see if I come up with a book or something exciting to tell you about that arose from NaPodPoMo.
I think you should. I think you should actually do a book on your regular show, though.
Yeah, I'm kind of something's brewing there. So yeah, because I am doing NaNoWriMo as well. So yeah, something will happen. Too much work this month.
Well, that is exciting. Yeah. You're busy.
And I guess I should move on and get busy editing and releasing. But it's been great to talk with you.
Oh man, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much for asking. And again, folks, you heard it here first on this show, Friends with Deficits, that I'm putting the shout out and the call out. If you're interested in being in a leadership capacity inside of National Podcast Post Month in order to help it grow globally, hit me up
at napodpomo.org, right? And
yes.
And also on Facebook. All right. Thanks again, Jennifer and Navarrete. Did I get it right?
Oh, hey, you did really well. That sounds good.
I swallowed the last part, so you didn't realize I made a mistake. Great. Well, I'll see you out there in Podland.
Yeah, I'll be listening to you soon.
All right, appreciate it. All right, thanks for listening. I'll see you tomorrow and the next day and the next day. I'm Adam Sultan signing off. Bye.